and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined as always by Matt and Shad. Gentlemen, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, plugging along.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, just for housekeeping, if you're watching this is going to be our last live stream of the year, because the next 2 weeks are Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So, um, there might be a slight chance I pop on Christmas Eve and I don't know, stream Path of Exile or something, but there's no promises there. It'll depend on what my day's looking like. But that's just how it's going to be for the next 2 weeks. We'll be back after that though with our usual time slot. So, since it is the holidays, I thought we would have a brief little discussion about what is the superior holiday special. And this is more in the style of like the Rankin Bass animated style ones, not like a movie or anything like that, or like a very special episode of a TV show.
Very special episode of a TV show opens up a lot of fun possibilities.
Yeah, that's why I'm closing that one out for this. Well, if you have one that jumps to your head, because now I will say, The Simpsons I think can count as a holiday special because that kind of existed as its own thing before the show started.
So, I don't really love the Rankin Bass stop action specials.
Really?
Man,
I am aghast. This is the second thing that has aghasted me. I've been aghasted by. My wife recently disclosed, because this weekend we watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with our children, and my wife actually disclosed that she's not seen. Which one is it?
Santa Claus is coming to town, I think is what you said.
Santa Claus is coming to town, which is the one with young Santa.
Now is that the one? That's the
Santa
one.
Claus either.
The one you're talking about is the one with I think Jack Frost is in it, and they reform him, and it has the Burgermeister burger.
It's got the Heatmeister in it and stuff.
Burger.
No,
I thought A Year Without Santa's got Heat Miser and Cold Miser.
Yeah,
okay.
That's that
I'm
one.
just mixing it up in my head.
And then there's there's the other one that where he's younger. I think it's The Adventures of Santa Claus, where he gets found by gods, and then there's trolls one with him. And he has
a one like that.
panther and an elf that hang out with him.
That one I haven't seen maybe more than once or so.
That one's obscure. You find it on TV every now and then, but I would say it's not a consistent TV
I love
one.
the old Rankin Bass stop motion. They had they coined a term for it, like magic motion or something weird like that. That there's really this is just stop motion animation with stop motion puppets. But I liked Rankin Bass. You know what? A perennial favorite, and by that I mean we've played it the last couple years, and my oldest daughter's enjoyed it. But you guys were probably aware of, but I mean, it kind of also blew me in mind because I guess I never thought as a kid I would just watch it. But Frosty the Snowman, that cartoon, Rankin Bass, and it's I'm damn, I didn't. When I think of Rankin Bass, I predominantly just think of the stop motion stuff. But
it's in
they
that
did Frosty, they did the sequel.
It's very much it has their animation style to it though, and I think I wouldn't be shocked if 'Twas the Night Before Christmas was a Rankin Bass one, the one with the mice. And South Park did a funny parody of that one.
Yeah. I can tell you part of the thing that I don't enjoy about them. For example, if you watch Rudolph, the fact that it's supposed to be a Christmas special is almost ancillary to what's going on until you get to the climax. Same thing goes for Frosty. Yeah, but I mean, for most of the thing, it's it's quote it's the mythical North Pole, so I mean, it's going to be in the backdrop, but it doesn't really have anything to do with it. So
I always had a problem with it because I would have loved a cowboy on an ostrich when I was a kid.
Hmm.
And it,
Nobody liked the Charlie in the box. It's like,
I also don't get
it-
the squirt gun with jelly in it. It's like, just take the jelly out.
yeah.
the thing that amuses me is that those toys just came too early, man.
Yeah. If you watch it, and I guess again, watching this stuff as an adult now with my kids, like as an adult, you pick up things, and this wasn't even like, oh, this was like a subtle joke for the parents that flew over my head as a kid. Just maybe just like sensibilities as an adult, you see Santa Claus and really all the other reindeer, but Santa Claus in particular is a dick to
Yeah,
Rudolph.
he's a
Yeah.
dick in
He's
that
like,
one.
oh, he's got a shiny nose. What a shame. What a little piece of shit he is. And it's like, Santa, why you're supposed to be like that? You literally premise your entire existence on I'm gonna like punish those. I'm not gonna give gifts to those kids on the naughty list. And here you are, like being such a dick. This Rudolph who had to this reindeer who has it's a congenital disorder. Santa, he can't help himself. Like he's
Yeah.
got a shiny red nose. At the end of the day, who saves Christmas?
Yeah.
Rudolph, the
Now,
guy crashing.
I do have one thing that I did agree with the elves on. Hermes should have been cast out for wanting to be a dentist.
Yeah.
We're getting a little
My theory-
little shop of horrors
because-
crossover.
Yes, because
My theory as I was watching it, my theory was that this is like a whole Will Ferrell elf situation. Because if you look, Hermie looks human-like versus compared to the elves. He has normal ears versus elf ears. Watch it. I'm serious. Like I'm like totally in on this conspiracy theory that Hermie is not an elf. He's just some sort of human that somehow got like roped in this, and that's why he's like, I don't want to like make toys. I don't feel because he's not an elf. He's a human being.
I just
So
figured he
normal human
dressed
being
weird because
somehow
he was
got
a
there.
nonconformist.
So one thing that I will champion that came out of it is, and you can find it on YouTube. My favorite band, Here Come the Mummies, have a song called Secret Santa that they did in the Rankin Bass Rudolph style. And it's a fun, it's a fun little kick to do and that sort of stuff. But look, it bothers me when you have a Christmas show, special, movie, whatever, and saying this a jerk. It's like, now come on, man. I really don't like that. I really don't like that they came down hard on Rudolph for something Rudolph had no control over. Like if you wanted to come down hard on Hermie for being like, look, man, we're all here. We got to get this stuff done. We need you pitching in. Like, okay, I may not agree with it, but in the words of Chris Rock, I understand.
All I'm
Rudolph
saying is
anything.
you got a guy saying he wants to be a dentist. That's like 2 steps away from bodies in his basement in a year. You gotta
Well,
nip that in the bud.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a dentist, and then I found out how much math I would have to do, and I changed my mind.
I want to say as a small child, I think the first time I saw it, the Bumble like scared the shit out of me. Like,
Oh, the Bumble terrified me.
especially
And
like
maybe
that
that-
scene where they're hiding from it and you don't actually see it. Like the first
They also had-
encounter.
Yeah, they had like in that encounter there was like a weird forced perspective because they made the Bumble seem like he was about like 20 feet tall, like he's a
Yeah.
kaiju. He just because his leg and foot is like way bigger than them.
Yeah.
And then when they actually present the Bumble, he's tall, but he's probably like 8 feet, 9 feet tall or something, and much different than being like the 25-foot monster Godzilla kaiju type of creature. But it did scare me. Maybe that was what set me off in my lifelong obsession with all things like Sasquatch or the Yeti.
Yay.
I also appreciate that Yukon Cornelius had like a corgi, and I think there was like a chihuahua in the mix.
Yeah, he had like small dogs.
Yeah, because he had like I think he had like a
Cornelius, listen to me.
I think he had like a border collie in there. I think there was a corgi. I'm trying to remember. I haven't watched it yet this year, but I was trying to remember like when they have the Bumble surrounded, you get a good look at all of his dogs when they go over the cliff.
Yeah, I mean, arguably they're the real heroes because I mean he didn't hesitate. Him and those dogs, they went right to the Bumble. They tackled it off a cliff. Like what a man.
Yeah.
Like,
And he got his
I
you say
peppermint
something,
vein.
Chad? Yeah.
it's just that was the other thing I wanted to I couldn't remember. Fun thing about Yukon Cornelius is he's been a proponent of open carry since 1964 because he's got a revolver shoved through his belt the entire
I
just the
mean,
whole time.
it's the North Pole. There's like no laws up there.
There's nothing. I mean, they never exactly establish how Yukon Cornelius, dragon punched a kaiju and pulled all of his teeth out. But good on him, I guess.
And I mean, like it's practically
That ought to worry everybody.
when you
Is
go.
Yukon Cornelius took down like King Kong and yanked all of his teeth out? It's like, who is this guy and how did he pull this off?
But I mean, and with no laws. I mean, when you get to the year 3000, I mean, Robo Santa just has straight up slavery going
Oh
on up
gosh.
there.
Yeah. So in terms of
Oh, he's got like a 50 cal Vectron.
yeah. Well, okay, believe it or not, in my youth, I did find I did encounter one of these. My dad introduced me to a guy that had a revolver that he had bought from some guys in Alaska for the purposes of shooting walrus. And the barrel was, I don't know,
Well,
like 2 feet long. I was a kid, so it may have looked even bigger.
Was it?
Like 2 feet long, and it may have been like 45-70. So it was
Was
this huge son of a bitch.
well when I go walrus hunting, I just use the gun the Joker had in Batman
I was
1989.
thinking of that. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
walrus are big,
They are, yeah,
you would, and a lot of blubber, so you probably would need a big caliber gun.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my like 45-70 is just shy of 30-06 in terms of size. So maybe that's what it is, but
I do have
that's what I think of.
he's kind of a jerk in Year Without a Santa too. Well, he's kind of
Yeah,
I think he was suffering from depression in that movie.
yeah.
And everyone around him was a chronic screw up, so I get why he was a little grouchy in that movie.
It's there are so many cases where even if Santa is not your central character, right? Then a really good, really likable Santa can still pull the whole thing out because he kind of provides the underpinning. If you watch Ernest Saves Christmas, and I'm not saying you need to, but if you watch Ernest Saves Christmas, Santa is not the protagonist. But the guy that plays Santa is so good and so likable at it that it definitely brings it brings the whole thing up. So, like, Elf is funny because Ed Asner kind of walks this line between being likable but also kind of grouchy. Uh, and so I think that comes out as a wash. But having a special, look, if you want me to say the best special, I'm always going to go back to the Charlie Brown Christmas special.
That one's good.
That's the one I'm always going to go back to. It's not too long, and it was done. It was done on the cheap with child actors. But the charm of it to me is that it honestly seems like it's kids putting on a play in animated form, and there's a charm and a heart to it. So, looks like something in chat might need to be dealt with. Yeah, that's spam, 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 spammity spam. Yep, there you go. You got it. But beyond that, specials other than that, I'm gonna have a hard time matching other things up to it.
Rudolph would probably be me. I like Frosty. What other ones?
Oh, and the charm of the claymation Christmas special that carries a lot to me. Um, it had number one. It's it varies things up. Each commercial break, it's a different presentation. It is old school claymation, but it's also got a nostalgia factor for me that it had one of my dad's favorite things with the when they were doing We Three Kings, or they were doing Star of Wonder, and the camels keep breaking in to you know to try and jazz it up. So my dad loved that, and so it's got a little nostalgia factor for me.
The bell, Carol of the Bells is funny on that, and it also has the California Raisins making an appearance.
Yeah.
Is
How
that
did stop motion raisins become such a big thing in the
they
80s?
were well no they went
They're
into the
huge.
they went into the 90s a bit. Like I don't know if I don't know if I don't know if people like that weren't around in that era would like kind of get it, but yeah, they were pretty big for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know what their
Are you
origins
gonna-
were. Were they just an advertising?
Yeah,
I think.
in for the California raisin cartel or whatever. What were you going to say, Matt?
Just I guess for specials. Another one that we play a lot. We actually just played Sunday is the Charlie Brown Christmas. Like that's a standard one we always do.
Mm-hmm.
Da-na-na-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, and
It's not. I don't even. It's not even necessarily my favorite. Like it's not. I don't think great, but it's kind of comforting at this point to watch it.
It's
so.
also the first Charlie Brown animated like special, so I don't think they quite knew what to do with it yet.
Mhm.
So I did some reading about it the other night because my kids were watching it, and there had been prior to it two primetime Christmas specials. I can't remember what they were, but they didn't really take off. And the Charlie Brown Christmas special kind of cemented the half hour, I guess, depending on commercials format of having a Christmas special with recognizable characters. So, that's that's it's got some legacy going too. But for me, it's the heart.
Now there's a couple I like. Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, which is a more obscure one now, and when they do play it, they cut off the best song with the people that rob him after he dies, singing about how bad they are. And I learned that that's actually the first Christmas like primetime special ever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
You
there,
say that, and now I remember reading it. I just couldn't pull it up.
and then this one's made a comeback. You can find it a little more now, but it's the stingiest man in town, which has Walter Matthau as Scrooge, and then Tom Bosley plays a humbug. He's like the narrator, and he's like this little bug.
Walter Matthau doing it is, frankly, that's a fun choice.
And
It's not my favorite Scrooge, but it's fun.
there's one from the 70s you can find on YouTube, but they that one's pretty decent because they bring Alistair Sim back, who probably did the best like I would say film version of Scrooge. And they bring him back to voice act it, and the guy that did Marley with him.
I haven't got one because I just recalled it since we talked about Scrooge. Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Like I remember seeing that a lot as a kid. Like I haven't seen that in easily probably 30 years.
It's on
maybe longer,
Disney
'cause
Plus.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's on Disney Plus. But outside of obviously the streaming service like Disney Plus, like I've not seen that shown anywhere. What I used to see it, so I think they must have played it on like regular network TV back in the day. Because I don't know how else I would have seen it. Like I didn't have Disney growing up. Like I know Disney Channel was like a cable subscription service, but my parents didn't have that with their cable package, so I never saw it. I couldn't have seen it on Disney, so I had to have seen it like when it was actually on network TV or something of that nature.
I had it. My
Yeah.
mom must have taped it when it like aired on TV because I know I had it on like a VHS for like forever.
So, Matt, I might screw with you yet again, but even as a kid, I didn't really care for the Mickey Mouse version of a lot of stuff. I didn't care for the Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol. I didn't care for um, the. No, I can't. I had it in my head and it's flooded. Yeah, God, I'm glad this is the last week I'm working for a little bit. But whenever it was Mickey doing it, I was for some reason as a kid I was always kind of turned off, and I don't know why. I know why I would be now, but I don't know why.
He doesn't bug me as much as an adult as he did as a kid. I was always more
Mickey?
into yeah. I always liked Goofy and Donald. If they were involved, that
I
was
was
cool.
always
But Mickey was just kind of like a whatever. He was
it's
always too
it's
much of
funny.
a goody goody, I think, or he kind of came
Yeah,
off that way.
I actually there's something about me. I don't know why, but I always like kind of the secondary, almost sidekick characters because I like Donald Duck way more than Mickey, like way more. And I also conversely, well, not conversely, kind of in the same vein. I like Daffy Duck way more than Bugs Bunny.
I
Although Bugs Bunny was not goody goody.
no Bugs
He would play
Bunny.
sometimes very mean spirited jokes on
I
people, but
I
he was that legitimately funny.
is
But
is like an adult. I rewatched all the Looney Tunes, and I still like Daffy more than Bugs. But man, like the Bugs character is great. Like just
mm,
I was always Looney Tunes loyal, man. Give me
yeah,
Bugs and Daffy and all of them ahead of anybody else.
because like there's just an edge to Bugs, like the way he does things. Now I will say that because that's he's actually Bugs Bunny's one I bring up when people complain about like Hulk Hogan in the '80s and how he was kind of a jerk. And I always point out like Bugs Bunny. I'm like, nah, like Americans kind of like their good guy to have a bit of a dickhead quality to them. And I
A
always
little
bring
bit
up,
of an edge.
yeah,
Yeah, if you go back and watch John Wayne movies where, and I'm not talking about later ones like Big John, or it wasn't Big John. Can't remember what it was called, but not later ones, but like John Wayne in the height of his John Wayning. He was a little bit of a dick too,
yeah,
and so,
Clint
but
Eastwood too.
oh well, that's because Eastwood's characters weren't like in westerns. They weren't heroes. They were anti-heroes. They were the
Yeah,
protagonists, but they just happened to be wrangling with folks who were worse than he was.
I mean they're obviously comedies, but like the Three Stooges were jerks. The Marx Brothers. I mean,
mm,
the Marx Brothers are interesting if you go back and watch that stuff because it's kind of like if you look at it through a modern day lens, it's a bunch of 4chaners trolling the normals. If you look at like the Marx Brothers, like in that vein, it's hilarious.
Um, I always look at the Marx Brothers as more of they're absurdists. They are live action absurdists. In I really enjoy that. Um, I really like seeing that. It's part of why I like Talladega Nights. Talladega Nights is just fully absurd, that sort of stuff. So,
yeah,
um,
Chad, I kind of am of the same vein. Like I actually like absurdist. I don't know why, but I think my comedy tastes have grown into like liking either absurdist or even like what they call like anti-comedy, where it's such an awkward, weird situation that I find it amusing. Either one I like. I like probably like absurdist more, but I do like anti-comedy. Like if I was much younger, when I was much younger, if you if you had told me like, yeah, Andy Kaufman, would sometimes get up there and just read Great Gatsby for an hour, I would have been like, that sounds like the worst. Like I would have been pissed. Like I would have wasted my money. Now as
yeah,
an adult, if he started doing that, I would have been like, what's? I would have been like confused, and then I'd been like, oh my god, this is actually funny.
I
And
would,
the fact
yeah,
that he kept going, it turns around to be like
yeah.
hilarious. But that comes with like you got to have a weird sense of humor, and I'm not
I
saying I
think
There's
don't.
I think
I probably do.
dark humor is still my favorite.
there's a certain level of over the top that I enjoy, and so like Talladega Nights, the example where Will Ferrell's character's in a wheelchair, not because he needs it, but he just like the doctor's like, oh no, he's fine. He just thinks he needs the wheelchair, and it cuts to them playing wheelchair basketball, and he's kicking another guy while he's holding the ball. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll show you I'm paralyzed. And he stabs himself in the leg and starts screaming. You have Michael Clark Duncan saying, no, what if we cut around the knife to get it out? Like, that absolutely cracked me all the way the hell up. And the other thing is, if something goes over the top, I appreciate it. Like, my wife and I last week, we watched, and this is going to seem like a real hard left, but we watched just the Nikki Glazer section of the Tom Brady roast, and she destroyed everybody. And it was fantastic because it was over the top and so good. And there were like 3 Gronk jokes, and they were all on point. And it was, I don't know, there's just something about taking some things and dialing up to 11 that apparently really resonates for me.
So, I'm trying to think of any other ones because there's like the I feel like the Christmas special is kind of a lost art a bit.
Yeah, kind of.
No, they don't do it because you can only run it once a year, and then how are you going to make a whole bunch of money on syndication on it if you can only run it once a year?
That's true. Also, I'm cheating a little bit, but the South Park Christmas specials I love. One of my favorite Christmas songs is Mr. Garrison's "Merry Fucking Christmas."
Uh,
That's another just so over the top it kills me.
Yeah, that one's they're all pretty good.
Um, what was it? The South Park Critter Christmas it's also like
Oh,
kind of horrifying, but
there's like 3 or 4 of my friends that on Christmas morning I'm like, "Hail Satan, everybody!" is what the text they get for Christmas.
oh, Chickadee the Chickadee is one of the defining lines of that special for me that just kills me.
Only his Dark Lord Satan would have sex with a porcupine.
So
That's
there are TV shows that have really good Christmas episodes, I think, but it again it depends on what you're looking for.
yeah, I think so too. And I can't think of any great like sitcom ones or anything off the top of my head.
Oh, I got one for you.
Okay.
The first actually the first 2 that they did on Community absolutely crack me all the way the hell up. One of them ends with a fist fight, and then the other one ends with, well, it gets them involved with the Glee Club, and just how crazy over the top that gets, where there's a song about baby boomer Jesus, and it ends with Chevy Chase saying, "You're welcome for everything important in the world."
You know, we Matt's even got on a shirt we forgot. Like one of the best ones, the
oh, the
Grinch.
Grinch.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, you know what? I'm ashamed of myself. I'm not even Catholic, and I feel like I should be saying Hail Marys for forgetting the original Grinch. Oh my God.
I like the original Grinch.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't watched it yet. We'll probably watch it on Christmas. Like last year, we watched like basically 3 different versions of the Grinch. We watched the original Grinch. We saw the Jim Carrey one, which I don't like, but
Mm-mm. Don't
through
like it.
through actually through an error, my daughter, who's now 5, but when she first watched it was probably like 3. Like the daycare she went to, there was one of the providers there who, I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk out of turn, but she wasn't terribly bright, and she was supposed to like play the Grinch for like the kids, and I guess didn't understand what to do, so she played like the Jim Carrey Grinch for them, and it's
Oh
like
that's bad for
it's
little kids.
it's not the worst movie in terms of like graphic or adult themes, but it is like a little, there are some adult themes and like explosions and stuff like that, and it slightly traumatized my oldest daughter,
Yeah.
to the point where
Well, the Who's are
literally,
kind of
like,
creepy in that. I could see that freaking a kid out too.
oh well, there's like an uncanny valley because they have like
Yeah, I could see
Yeah.
that. I could
nose,
see that
like
freaking a kid out.
animalistic faces. Um, and Jim Carrey's Grinch makeup is kind of scary, a little bit scary too for like a small kid. She still has nightmares to that. She likes the Grinch, oddly, but she still has nightmares to the point where literally last night, in the middle of the night, she had to come and sleep in mommy and daddy's bed because she's like, I'm scared. There's the Grinch is in my room. I'm like, the Grinch isn't real. It's like, he is. So it's kind of odd,
You,
but
Matt,
the
you have to remember, he's a mean one, that Mr.
he's
Grinch.
he, uh he- to go back to the original one, like, it's like, oh, the Grinch doesn't like the Who's. Every time, every like moment you have, the Who's basically saying like, "Ah, that Grinch, what a piece of shit he is." Like, "Oh, he smells like an asshole," and it's like,
Yeah.
well, of course he doesn't like you. You're mean to him every
Yeah.
chance you get.
Yeah.
Of course, I wouldn't like you either.
They're like that in the Jim Carrey one, which by the
Yeah.
way is the like visibly one of the darkest Christmas movies I can remember. And they're like that in the Benedict Cumberbatch one too, except
We
what
saw
they have
that one.
done, they have layered on all the false positivity on top. They chase this guy through the town who's like, I don't want to hear your song, and they're like, let's all 50 of us chase him and sing God
Yeah.
Rest You Merry Gentlemen in the most aggressive way we can. It's like, wow.
I guess the Benedict Cumberbatch one wasn't overly well received. I actually kind of liked it. It was fine. Maybe I'm just a Benedict Cumberbatch fan. But I enjoyed it. Like, if we watch it again, which we probably will this Christmas, I wouldn't mind it. It's not it's inoffensive. I will say the Jim Carrey one does have a great throwaway line that's people kind of remember now, where he's like going down the list. It's like, solve world hunger, tell no one.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like,
That's
that's just a great throwaway gag.
you know the scene where he goes and he grabs the tablecloth and jerks it and the stuff doesn't move and he comes back and pushes it all off. He wasn't supposed to do the clean grab and jerk and get that. He was supposed to grab it and everything falls off there and he did it too well, which is why he ran over. And that's funny too. The thing at the end of the thing I will give the Benedict Cumberbatch one is the very end of it, the last, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. That's good. Like, that's got heart. That's got, like, that all works. But man, right there at the beginning, he's like, oh, God, I have to go to town and get this, and I don't like this time of year. And then they're like, God rest ye merry gentlemen.
Yeah,
I'm just
I
like,
feel bad for him.
yeah.
I just want to be left alone. He's a bit of a misanthrope, but
Yeah, and he's not mean to Max in that one either. Which
No.
which was part of the character dynamic was he was even mean to his dog is how miserable of a person he was. And then, that turns around.
If you have you guys read or even aware of the sequel book that came out last year, How the Grinch Lost Christmas?
No, I don't need sequel
It's
stuff.
someone wrote, they commissioned a book, and it was written in the Dr. Seuss like rhyming style, and the person did it like an actual pretty decent job of making it seem very Dr. Seuss-ish. But the theme is like the Grinch is, he loves Christmas, and the Who's are having this like contest, like who can decorate the best Christmas tree. And so he goes all out thinking like, oh, I'm gonna win it, and then it gets won by Cindy Lou Who. But the fact that he gets so enraged that he just like is gonna abandon Christmas again, and it's like, dude, you need some, come on, you need some therapy here. Like, you're a little too like loose, where it's like the slightest provocation, you're gonna go back to your evil ways. It all works out in the end because they make him realize like, oh, like, no, we actually like, you're actually wanted, you're part of our town. They did kind of bring it back, and the Who's were a little bit nice. They were nicer to him. They were very much like, you're part of like our town, you're part of our community, like you're cool with us. So I did like that message. It's actually not bad.
I like them being oblivious, like, to his existence in like the original special. Okay, so for our next topic, this is pretty much, You can go with video or tabletop. It doesn't have to be to any one system. So what is like your preferred class in an RPG?
Oh gosh. Um.
I usually prefer just like a straight melee warrior build in what I do.
So
That's a good question.
in most digital games, I like playing a character who's got high charisma, high intelligence. Because in most digital games, if you've got intelligence, you've got skill points to put around. It's like, yeah, maybe I don't have a great dex for my weapon early on or a great strength for it, but I'll get there. Like I'll just be dumping points into it. And I really enjoy having a character that can talk his way around a lot of stuff.
And
There's
stuff
an
like
encounter.
stuff like Fallout New Vegas and the original Fallouts rewarded you with taking high intelligence and charisma bonuses. Like in
Yeah.
the original Fallout, you can actually talk the final boss into essentially killing himself versus fighting him.
You can do that also in 3 in New Vegas, and then in here for example, because I'm with the new patch coming out next year that's adding a bunch of subclasses. I'm going to have another playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3, but an intelligent, high charisma character in Baldur's Gate 3 is able to sidestep a lot of stuff, and you can. There's some enemies you can talk into doing the job for you. So
Well,
I enjoy doing that. If I can't do that, then it's going to fall into. So, for example, my first Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough was a charisma intelligence warlock. He was a Fey Pact warlock. But if I can't do that, I usually either end up playing a cleric or a brute, a beat stick. Rarely do I play a barbarian, but until here recently, barbarians got more class features than fighters did, so there was more to play with. But yeah, I'm gonna go intelligent and charismatic to cleric to brute is gonna be my usual progression. There's no clerics Fallout, so it doesn't work.
If it's a game that I've played a while or I'm familiar with, then I will get more experimental with either my build or the class. So that will be like, oh, I can play like a mage or I can play something different. But if I'm just starting out, I'm kind of with Brad. I'll do like your standard like melee or fighter, something that's kind of a little more well balanced or potentially well balanced. Or if not that, then I default to something like a knight or something where it's like I'm a tank really.
where
I have high defense.
I can deal with
maybe
my
high offense.
lack of motor skills, so I can take a couple hits versus being a wizard and getting
I
wrecked.
kind of play conservatively if I'm doing it for like the first time or early on. And then once I get things, I can change it up a bit.
That's why I don't like playing like games with other like if I'm playing like the Division 2 or something, I don't like playing with other people or even like Diablo 4 because everyone wants to like go zoom and I'm like, no, I have to go down that corner like and see if there's like something worth picking up.
Yeah.
Like why is everything gotta be so fast, guys?
Yeah. I looked back through this how much of a nerd I am. I keep a lot of my old character sheets and stuff. Out of everything I have in D&D, I have never played a wizard. I have never played a monk. I have played a paladin twice. So, there's been a lot of rogues. Couple of bards. Bards really seem to kind of fit in better for my playstyle. I didn't get into that until later on.
Bard's an interesting choice.
I like that with a bard you can you can thematically have a lot of choices. You can have a bard who just sings and has supportive stuff. You can have a warrior poet bard who's like, singing battle hymns but getting in there and mixing it up too. You can have a mage bard who uses songs to cut. Like, there's lots of ways you can do that, and I do enjoy that quite a bit. I'm playing one in a friend of mine's running a game, and I ended up playing a bard again, but that's because I found a wonderful bard name I'd written down 2 years ago to finally. My bard's name is the Splendiferous Finch, and I was like, that name is too good not to use.
I think the three of us play video games a little too much alike. Honestly, I think that's why Justin, you and I did well when we played Baldur's Gate together, because we weren't like rushing each other. Because that's what I hate. Like, I think I'm a lot like Matt. Like, I play conservatively, and I don't like people like just zooming around. Like, I hate that when you play an MMO and people are just rushing like the dungeon or whatever, and it's like, could you chill out for like 5 seconds?
Yeah. In so many games in tabletop that I've played, when I'm not playing a face character or I'm not doing something like that, there's this moment where the GM will say something and he's waiting for a response, and a whole bunch of the table just sit there and look at each other. And it's this character where I've decided, nope, I am not like facing forward on this. No, nope, not doing it. Nope. Although the funny thing is, if I go by total sessions, I've probably played more rogues than anything else, but
Have I played a rogue? I can't think. Because Matt was a ranger when we did our game, and you were, what were
Paladin.
you? Yeah, you're a paladin. That's right. You were the what are they called?
Aasimar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're kind of very, you were an interesting character. On that one. Okay. So we're going to do the main event this week. Is the title of the episode, Would You Rather? So the idea here is I'm going to throw out 2 wrestlers, and you're going to take, you're going to pick one. This can be based on any mix of like personal preference, like do you just like them better? Also, but you can mix in business concerns too. So you might say like, well, I like so and so better, but like if I was running a promotion, I'd rather have that guy. So it's really however you want to do it. So I have a number of names here, and I might not go to all of them depending on how we get discussion wise. But so let's start off with, I guess, the big one. I don't know how contentious it'll be. So this is: would you take Cody Rhodes or Roman Reigns?
Cody.
I struggled with this one.
I'll go ahead and say why. Oh, I'm sorry, Matt. You go ahead.
I'm struggling with this too, so go ahead, Shad.
All right. I will tell you why I will take Cody over Roman. Number one, there was like a 5 to 7 year stretch where Roman just did not work. And that was with the full weight of the company behind him, and it did not work. And Cody, took off after he left WWE, but even while he was still there, he was able to find ways to make things work. Yeah, okay, he was part of Legacy, and that was bland as hell. Yes. But the dashing Cody Rhodes thing worked. As much as he was sick of doing it, he made Stardust work. And then, speaking of work, Cody is a guy who I've never heard of Cody negotiating for limited dates stuff. Yeah, I'm not gonna have to hardball Cody to get him to show up when I need him. He's not gonna be like, oh, I've only got 12 dates this year. It's like, no. And so,
I don't think he would do that, but I'm going to just throw like I also think he hasn't been in a position to do that yet because he wasn't going to negotiate down until he got his Mania, like in his title run, and he was kind of needed to prove some things after AEW, and AEW needed him all the time. So like, I don't necessarily think he'll do it, but I also don't think like he's hit that point in his career where he could conceivably do that without
Major backlash.
yeah, but I think that also is how he got into some trouble towards the end of AEW, is being gone for other projects.
Well, and I think that that was also a learning experience for him in that it's like, oh, I was gone for a whole bunch of stuff, and it's like, wow, that did you no favors, and now he's got his face all over every. And in comparison, you have people go out for. It's like, okay, we're doing press. Cody's like, yeah, I'll be on whatever, right? They'll send him to the TV shows and stuff. And they asked, I think it was Paul Heyman, they asked about, why doesn't Roman do press? And he's like, oh, well, that's not part of his character to do it. And it's like, dude, is it part of Darby Allin's character to do press? No, but man, he gets out there and does it, right? Like,
He's good at it too.
yeah. And so I really dislike the idea of being like, well, this guy was the face of our company, but he doesn't do press. And it's like,
You know, I don't know how I feel about that with Roman, because I think the more he would talk and like the more layers you peeled back, like doing press, I think would maybe hurt him a bit.
but I mean, he didn't, as I remember, he didn't do a lot of press even when he was doing his face run stuff.
No.
So,
I almost well, I agree. I would agree with Brad. I would almost agree with Paul Heyman, but not in the run. Not in like that smart aleck. Like, it's
Yeah.
not his character. It's like, if you think about it, it's like, well, no, it actually isn't his character, but it's more like Brad said, where it's like if he just went out there and did press, and it's like he's like a normal guy. I think it would lessen his aura. I hate that word, but he has that now because they basically built him up to be this like unstoppable force and just this like aloof, like arrogant asshole, really. And I actually saw something recently on social media that I disagreed with, but because I don't think the WWE is that smart or clever, and really it's like Roman and Paul Heyman booking this. And I had positive things to say about Paul Heyman's booking in the past, but he's not a perfect booker, and he's not brilliant, and he doesn't have this many layers to them. That the premise of this posting on social media was that they are trying to do this really like in-depth, thought-provoking thing where it's like, oh, Roman is obviously he had this dominant. They what they styled as dominant. The announcers kept telling you, oh, it's he's such a dominant champion. When in reality, he had to beat everyone by like a million interferences. It's like, okay, like, and no hate to the guy, so not hating this guy, but it's like, if you're so dominant, you're a great champion, you're one of the best of all time. Like, why do you need like 5 guys to run out and help you beat LA Knight? Like, you shouldn't. Like, I mean, no offense, but you shouldn't struggle to beat. You don't need interference to beat Logan Paul.
Yeah.
if
Like,
if you're that dominant, you don't need interference. Brock Lesnar was dominant. Roman was not dominant.
yeah, and again, the premise of this is that they like, guys, you don't know what they're doing. They're trying to make you hate Roman, so that when a babyface comes along and finally beats him, then you're gonna be all in on that babyface. But the problem is, like, even if you want to style like that's what they were trying to do, and I don't think they were trying to do that, but
They're not.
it didn't work in the sense that the audience that you have now cultivated, they're insanely loyal and tribalistic to you, but they didn't see that. They bought into like hook, line, and sinker all the announcers saying, "Oh, he's dominant," to the point where I felt it's actually contributed to what we talked about in recent shows, that Cody's run has not been, in my opinion, as good of a world title run as it should have been. Because I think as soon as Roman popped back up, people were like, ready to go back on the Roman train. And it's like, you shouldn't. And now Roman's kind of like a babyface without having changed his character or have any sort of comeuppance. It probably is in a sense worse than Swerve. I still maintain that Swerve, like, is a face when he really shouldn't have been, because it's like, did he really show like contrition for doing a breaking and entering? But you can almost kind of feel like, well, I guess he did see his family home burned down by Hangman, so maybe the pain and
That's
suffering.
called consequences.
Yeah, it's karma. So, I mean, you could argue like, well, he's faced some humility with the karma that he has experienced from that, but whatever. Like, Roman hasn't really changed his character at all. It's just like the people that he's facing now are heels, so he's almost by default a good guy.
Yeah.
But it would hurt his opinion. Go back to my point. Like, it would hurt his aura, because it's like he needs to be this like aloof asshole. If he's just like smiling, happy-go-lucky, babyface Roman again, then it would be like, no, it would be even worse, jarring whiplash, like mood discognizance, dissonance. Sorry, it's the word I'm looking for. It'd be just worse. But I would pick Cody. I guess the ultimate, I think it's manufactured, but I guess you could say the ultimate test would be like, well, who's made more money? And it's like, well, Roman probably WWE so far. I don't buy into Meltzer's ridiculous assertion that Cody is basically like at Austin level. No, he isn't. Just because
that's not going to happen again.
Because
he has show me the figures that he's moved as much merch as Austin did, or Cena even back in the day, or still today.
You can't. I think where Meltzer's wrong on that too is, like if you're including TV deals in that, like that is the brand and the work they've put into their brand for like 40 plus years now. But I wanted to add what that person was saying about the Roman angle is they didn't do that. Like, stop. This is like when they had the Brock and Roman rematch, like at that one Mania, and everyone was like saying like, oh, and they had this like elaborate story about how this was really about like how Roman got screwed the first time and blah blah blah, and it never came up once because they don't put that much thought into it. Like even
they don't.
It even happens and it even happens in AEW where people do these like super deep things to like some like side angle, and it never comes up once. It's like, guys, they did not put this level of thought into it. Like
it doesn't, but I will argue that in some cases they do add subtle things, and that's, to me, mostly it's like the elite storylines, because they will pay that sort of attention to detail.
Like in Punk will, if Punk has creative control, like Punk and Raven will put those kind of little details into their work if they're feeling it. But like if it's just like a standard thing that like is being booked by like a booking committee, like they're not putting that much thought into it.
Here's the thing. There's trying to put too much detail in is continuity wank that is not going to have widespread appeal. And the other thing that happens that we have to remember is that it doesn't matter what company it is, you're going to have people who are not that deep into it, and they are taking everything the announcers say at face value. And so they're like, okay, that's what it is. Therefore, the whole Roman is dominant thing. No, that's not heel stuff. They're not trying to make you... You say that directly to the crowd because you're gaslighting them into trying to get them to believe it. That is you telling that whole thing was telling the crowd this is what you should think. And the other reason that I didn't mention earlier that I would take Cody over Roman is I straight up think Cody's better in the ring than Roman is.
Oh, he's definitely better in the ring than Roman is.
Straight up.
Cody is better.
But where Cody gets
overrated.
Oh, he is overrated.
I think he's a little better than what was said about him in the past, the 3-star savior, Cody Rhodes. Like, I think he can be a little better than just.
He really has his ups and downs, I think, though, as a worker. Like, he can really, he can really lay an egg, and especially like he can lay an egg when you don't expect him to. He's
a better worker than a 3-star savior, but he's not as good of a worker as some people make it out to be, or in some of the matches that he's had in the past like couple of years that Meltzer has rated like 4 or 5 stars. It's like no. Yeah. Like maybe some could be in the 4-star range, but not.
I need the Arnold. I need the Arnold. Stop it when you start talking about Meltzer's star ratings.
Stop it.
I will say though,
So
but I want to throw in there though. So Cody is better than him in the ring, but now where I think Roman is better than Cody is Cody has terrible instincts when it comes to booking and like what his alignment as a character should be or what he should do, because like I was reading this thing that was like talking about it, about how the fans in AEW turned on them, and it was actually like a pro WWE account, and then they put in parentheses what they were talking about. I was like, and this was entirely Cody's fault, like that the AEW fans turned on him.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. They. I mean, there's many reasons why. My personal theory. I mean, people wanted him to turn heel, and he didn't want that. But my personal theory is, well, the reason why people wanted you to turn heel is because at least at that point, AEW was it was less, it was more of an alternative to WWE especially in terms of style. So Cody, who has always, at least in AEW, like well, certainly to now, but he's always had kind of a WWE presentation. You were going to get rejected anyway because it's like he was a good character. He did do some good stuff, but it's what I could describe with him, like the pageantry, like, oh, I have my own like Cody elevator coming out, and then it's like the elaborate, like, I'm gonna dress like Homelander. It's like the crowd is always gonna turn on you because you're too fucking extra. Like, it's too much.
I
Like, we
think
don't
if
want that. We want guys.
I think if his feuds didn't suck,
look,
he would have been okay. I think that's where he got in
AEW,
trouble. Is his feuds and ring work went downhill.
AEW fans can love guys like Orange Cassidy, who I've said before on the show, like, has had one of the best actual character arcs of the company. But they can like him. They can like some wacky stuff, sure, but they'll love stuff like the Briscoes versus FTR dog collar match, where it's old school guys just beating the piss out of each other, bloodying each other up, stuff like that. The Cody, like, oh, I've dyed my hair black as a vague reference to a comic book from 30 years ago. Oh, why don't people understand this? It's like, you're being such a geek. Come on.
Yeah.
The
Like,
phrase "you're too
extra."
extra" just sums it
It's
up
too
so
extra.
well. The other,
I also feel like part of the reason why like people turn on him is like, it's too much of your wife, dude. We don't want to see her.
Well,
I think ultimately that, I told you before offline, like, my theory is like the reason why like Cody and Tony Khan maybe had like a falling out of sorts, and the reason why, besides money, that he went and the chance to be like the big star even to WWE, is because, like, I think Tony Khan was like, yeah, no, I can't keep your wife on TV anymore. It's enough.
I think where he gets in trouble too is he has I think he has a lot of Dusty's like Carney to him in the worst ways.
Oh, he's Carney. Oh yeah, he is Carney.
the one thing I did want to say on the ring work before it got too far away from us was the fact that, yes, Cody can just out of nowhere drop a stinker sometimes. But ever since he left WWE and then went out and was making his bones, I don't remember seeing a match where he just went out there and dogged it.
He actually took a while to come around when he left, honestly. Like,
but I don't remember seeing a match where he acted like he didn't want to be there.
No, it's a I don't want to say talent issue. It's a mechanics like skill issue with him, like when matches don't work. Like I also think like when his ring work was going down in AEW was also when he was a part-timer, because like I say this about Britt Baker and some other people, like he's not talented enough to not do it constantly. Like he immediately starts like getting ring rust, like, because you can see guys like that don't do it for like a year and they're fine, or you can go to that one Mania where Mick Foley just hadn't wrestled for like 6 weeks and he was like rusty as hell.
So the thing is, my comparison was that you had, like, I've never seen Cody go out there and act like he didn't want to be out there, but I've seen plenty of Roman matches where he just acted like, oh, fine, and was, basically dragging his feet through it, like he didn't want to be out there. It's like, okay, that's another reason why I'll I'm gonna pick Cody over Roman.
I think I'm gonna take
I
Cody, but it's not like it wasn't like an easy choice for me because I think Roman does have like positives.
he
What are you gonna say,
does
Matt?
in terms of. I think Cody is a better worker because I was talking about how he's a little bit overrated, but he is a better worker than Roman. I would say that Roman is good at working a WWE cinematic style, and the fans eat it up. But the whole like I'm gonna pause mid match and monologue, and then the interferences will start. It's like it doesn't work for me. I think it's bad. But I mean, he's very good at working that style. But
Yeah,
if you were to take Roman and it's like his contract runs out and he's like, yeah, I'm not resigning, I'm gonna go actually work New Japan, and the plop in New Japan, who with like great workers, like would he hold up, would he like hang? And I don't think he would really.
I
Like
think you'd see him
it'd
improve a
have to be a lot of
lot,
smoke
but
and
I don't think he
mirrors.
would hang.
Yeah.
I will say
And I've
though,
never.
watch a couple of solo main events, and you will appreciate a Roman match way more because it's
Yeah.
the same crap with none of the charisma or
Yeah.
talent.
What I was gonna say is, even as I said, like Roman's good working the WWE style. Like Roman, in my opinion, his entire career, he's been around for like a decade or plus more.
Oh no,
I
he's been around.
don't.
He's been around since FC. He's been around pre NXT. He was around in like when that was still
Yeah,
FCW.
he has never had a match, and I've seen a lot of Roman matches. He's never had a match as good as Cody versus Dustin from Double or Nothing, which I saw live. Like he never has had a match that good. And I
He's
understand Dustin Rhodes is still like even in his 50s is a great worker, but he's never had a match that good,
his best match is
and I
probably
doubt he
still
ever will.
that AJ Styles one, um, and that's probably still his best match is like a singles. But like I wouldn't even say that comes close to Cody and Dustin.
No. I remember watching that one. It was like, well, that was Roman's best match, and I still didn't think it was great. I thought it was all right.
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know where I haven't seen it in like probably
Yeah,
getting
that's
close to a
true.
decade now, but I think at the time I quite liked it, and um I thought maybe Roman had like some was a little better as a worker than I was giving him credit for, but like I don't it wasn't like 5 star or anything. Like but it was good, probably like pretty good. Um but yeah, so let's go on to our next one.
Okay.
Okay, so this one that I have some interesting things to say about it, and I've kind of talked about it before. So, this is the Rock and Roll Express or the Fantastics. Because so I'm going to give my breakdown of it because this is kind of a different take I've had after watching a lot of footage lately. So I'm going to take the Fantastics, and here's why. Okay, Ricky Morton out of the four men. Ricky Morton is on a level all of his own. Like he's an amazing promo, great charisma, great in-ring worker. But Tommy Rogers is really good. Tommy Rogers
Mm.
is really good. He's not Ricky Morton, but he's maybe a tier or two below him. So you still have Tommy Rogers. He's really good. Now, where the big difference is, though, is Bobby Fulton the two weak links. Bobby Fulton is miles ahead of Robert Gibson as a tag partner. Much more capable in the ring. He can actually talk. Like he brings some things to the table instead of kind of being. I mean, I feel like I shit on Robert Gibson all the time, but the more I've watched the Rock and Rolls as an adult, I'm just like Robert Gibson like doesn't really bring much to the table other than standing there and not sucking. He doesn't outright suck, which helps. And
I
I
was
think
gonna say you put this out there to screw with me, Brad.
and I think
Like,
the Fantastics are much more flexible. Like if I want to have like just a blood infused brawl with like plunder and stuff, like I want the Fantastics. If I want like a stiff fest from like an all Japan style match, I want the Fantastics. Um,
I, eh, historically and culturally and all that sort of stuff, rock and roll has a bigger footprint. But the truth of the matter is, I'm going to take the Fantastics because I have met and talked to and spent time with Bobby Fulton, and he was the best veteran I have ever met in a locker room to hang around with and talk to. And I'm just going to take him because I really like Bobby Fulton as a person. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the other guys, but I'm not saying it's like a big thing, but I got a personal connection to Bobby Fulton, so that's why I'm going to pick him.
I'd still go with rock and roll. They are up there as probably in my top 3 tag teams of all time. The other 2 would be Steiner's, obviously, and maybe like the Young Bucks, probably. Even I almost hate saying Young Bucks just because I kind of don't like including people who are still active, and I understand like rock and roll and has been active in recent years. I think they're not active technically, because I think Ricky Morton has been doing more stuff with his son Kerry.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has.
But I still probably pick rock and roll. Although I think Brad's assessment actually is correct. Like, Ricky Morton is on another level.
Ricky Morton is like elite all-time tier of a worker.
Yes, he is. He's one of the best workers of all time. I think, if not for his size, perhaps. And he worked. Look, he did. The tag team worked. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't be like the guys who were in their 60s or close to 70. Like, they still wouldn't be able to do stuff nowadays as they can.
And they get over. That's the thing. He still gets over.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're great. So Ricky Morton is part of like the rock and roll. It's not like, oh, he wasted his career not going singles. It's like, no, like I think it was the right choice. But Ricky Morton is one of the best of all time, like flat out. But I would put both Fantastics ahead of Robert Gibson. And I don't hate Robert Gibson at all. I think he was perfectly fine in the role he did. And it's what at the end of the day, what is Robert Gibson going to say? Oh, I was one half of one of the best tag teams of all time. Like, I mean, oh well, like that's a great legacy to have. But I still would say rock and roll, even though I agree with your assessment, Brad. I think you're exactly right. Like, Ricky Morton, one of the best of all time.
Well,
better, and bringing down the rear is Robert Gibson. But I would still take rock and roll. I think you could do a lot more.
And I really love, like, when we watch Fantastic stuff, though, like, their Clash of the Champions brawl with the Midnights, awesome. That Sheep Herders match we watched, just good stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
they were really great.
I will give the Rock and Roll Express props for this, though. So you can find a shoot interview of him talking about it, but Chris Jericho, when he was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, got, like, I think just a tape that said, like, Crazy Hillbillies or something. And it's these crazy hillbillies doing all this stuff. But the one takeaway from it is they had a wall, and the Rock and Roll Express got top billing over Jesus Christ on the wall. So
I think equal billing.
No, I think they were on top. I think he was there, and then they were like the picture above him.
I honestly, I think they were equal, but I don't have Jericho's book handy to look for it. But like I said, you guys are both right, and you'll get more name recognition out of the rock and roll, but I don't care. I'm still picking the Fantastics.
Yeah. Well, I think for match purposes, but like if you're trying to, the Rock and Roll Express are like a bigger team.
They are, but general. I don't care. I'm calling the Fantastics.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna hit you with another one that's gonna be difficult. So this is Buddy Landell or Eddie Gilbert.
I would go with Eddie Gilbert. This is a tough one because both guys are guys who I would say were talented but didn't live up to their potential.
Let's pretend they're clean for this.
If they're clean, I actually would still say Eddie Gilbert. just because I think Buddy Landale was a great worker. And as we saw, like with the global stuff, we saw like a while back, a couple of years back at this point, he was a really effective heel. You could have brought him in, and he easily could have been one of your top heels in like a show because he could have got himself over as that. He just came on. He could really work that crowd as just like a smarmy douche.
I think you could
But
job
he was a good worker, so he could back it up.
Buddy Landell like 9 times out of 10, and it wouldn't hurt his heat because he's so obnoxious he can just get it all back.
Yeah. But I would still take Eddie Gilbert because I think Eddie Gilbert was a great worker. Plus, Eddie Gilbert did have a really good mind for the business and was a pretty good booker. So if I'm running a territory, I'm a promoter. That would be kind of attractive too because it's like it's a guy who, and if I needed to, I could actually pick his brain or even hire him to book my territory or get ideas for my territory, or even just have him book his own stuff, and it would be quality stuff. Like he had a mind for the business. Like I really did think he did a great job. I would have picked him. I think Buddy Landale was. I think he'd be a solid hand, and depending upon the size of your promotion, like he would have been either a top heel or at least like solidly mid card for you. But I think there was more upswing to Eddie, so I would have chose him.
I think
So
Buddy blew himself up more than Eddie did. So because I think there's a world where if Buddy had stayed clean, like he does some like program with Ric Flair in like 86 or 87 and like is just a big.
So Matt, I agree with Matt. Not and for all the reasons you said, but here's what I'm going to add to it: is number one, yeah, you're on the clock. You're waiting for Buddy Landell to blow up. You're waiting for him to self-destruct again. But the other reason I'm going to go with is the number of guys I have heard from that era talk about how much they learned from Eddie Gilbert and how Eddie Gilbert helped them get better and how much they developed from even riding in the car with Eddie Gilbert and talking about stuff. Like that right there to me, I'm like, this is a guy who is just a general quality of life good pickup to have. Like the guy seems from listening to everybody seem to make things better just by being there. So in addition to everything Matt said, because Matt had a really good breakdown on it, Buddy Landell, good heel, really good heel, but again, there's all of the not in-ring stuff as well as the ticking clock for when the self-detonation goes.
Eddie's a bit of a ticking clock too, but not in the same way though.
Yeah, there you go. Those were the words I was trying to conjure.
You know Eddie's gonna at least give you 6 months before he fucks it up. You don't know with Buddy. Buddy might screw it up on like night 2 or even night 1. Now I will say when we watched
it's the Buddy Landell cocaine Jack in the Box is what you're running with.
I will say when we watched Global, Buddy was like by far the most entertaining thing on those shows. Like, and it wasn't even close. Now I will say I think when it comes to in-ring, Buddy's better because there's points where Buddy's just amazing in the ring. Like I love his like twisting elbow drop. Which someone needs to rip that off, but that's neither here nor there. His character, like doing the Nature Boy character, I think is really fun because he kind of brings his own element to it, but part of it is like he's visibly ripping it off, so you'll hate him.
Yeah.
And like there's stuff in like Smoky Mountain that's fun. There's like a promo with him and like the Dirty White Boy where they're talking about how they went to high school together and they didn't like each other and all this stuff, but I would still say Eddie Gilbert for like the things Matt mentioned, just the booking, the mind. You'll get a little more mileage out of him, I think. I think if you could guarantee me they will both stay clean, I might take Buddy. But I think Eddie's a better choice, a safer choice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go on to our next one. So this is going to be Terry Gordy or John Tenta. Because that is a tough one. Because John Tena, I think, has a lot of sentimental value, but Terry Gordy is like a freak of nature.
I'd
Well,
pick Terry
John
Gordy.
Tenta is too.
To me, it's well, I guess. So I guess the calculation, if you really want to be fair, like put yourself as a promoter booker, like what role are you having this individual fill? And as as I do have sentimental value for John Tenta, and I feel like I developed that perhaps after he died, because most of what you as a kid we were all like we saw him like most of what we saw him of is what his basically is either his WWF run, either like as Earthquake or as Golga, or his
Or
WCW run, which mostly was not good.
Avalanche
That
and Shark.
yeah, that's mostly what we've seen him of. And it really was like seeing some of his stuff from like Japan that really be like, oh no, actually he was really actually good.
I thought he was pretty good in
But
his
then
first WWF run, honestly.
he was pretty good. But uh, also some of the stories I feel like I've heard from largely from his son. He was kind of on social media like Instagram, is try to keep his memory alive and will post pictures and stories about his dad. And obviously that's his son, so he's I guess you could if you want to be cynical, he's a non-biased. He's not a non-biased source, but I believe all these things like and everyone. He's one of those guys that to the extent that people talk about him, whenever his name would come up, no one has a bad thing to say about John Tenta. They're not like, oh, John Tenta, like he screwed me over on this deal, like whatever, like nothing. Like it's always positive, and he just seems like he was a really good guy, like loved his family, and unfortunately, passed away way too early because he got cancer. But he was a good worker. But would I book John Tenta? How would I book John Tenta? If I had a smaller promotion, not like WWE or WCW, not a bigger promotion, or even nowadays like an AEW. Like if I had a smaller promotion, yeah, you could push him. Maybe it's like your main heel at times, but he probably would be more like mid card to upper mid card for me if I was a booker. But Terry Gordy was different. Like Terry Gordy is a guy who in Japan obviously was a world champion, and you could easily push in that role because he was so damn good as a worker, like tremendous worker, and he had good size to him. So he's a guy who you could absolutely have in the upper mid card to main event, like that. Great talker too. Like he would have been a great hand. And once you got into the '90s, obviously, like he did a lot of stuff in Japan, so that's mostly where he spent his time. And the climate wasn't really good for him.
Yeah.
I feel in some places. I actually thought this is as an aside, a thought experiment we could do at some point is like how maybe fantasy book places like WCW. Like, what if Hogan had never come to WCW? Because Hogan completely changed the landscape of WCW in more ways than one. I'm not talking about the NWO. What
Yeah.
if they go with the Hogan route, but they brought in guys who maybe could have turned things around, like Gordy, whatever. But that's an aside. Like, I'd pick Gordy over Tenta because I think he was a fantastic worker. He was better suited almost for the territory days, or Japan. And unfortunately, by the time he would have maybe like been a thing in North America in the '90s, he had his health issues, and that was the decline of things. But I still think he's a fantastic worker. He's another one of those guys that through this show has seen more of his work, and I'm really impressed by what I've seen beyond just. And I knew he was good, but seeing if it's like his early Freebird stuff to some of his like Japanese work, it's like phenomenal. So I'd pick him.
I know one of the lapsed fan guys went on a rant about him because they were like, I don't get him. He's like a bumblebee. Like, he should not be able to move the way he does. Also, he was the UWF World Champion, like, for most of that promotion's run. And they were, like, it was, like, super popular while it was still running. So I think, like, he does have, like, a track record, I think you could say, in the United States of being, like, a top-of-the-card guy in the 80s, at least. I think I would agree, though. I'd take Gordy. Like, Gordy is just, you can use him as a face or a heel, and he doesn't really have to change that much. He's a dynamic worker. Like I think you you would struggle to find someone I think as good as him. And like he does some fun promos. Like I don't get why people say he can't talk because we've watched some of his promos on this show. And they're always fun like the if I'm gonna
Don't touch my
yeah,
van.
if I'm gonna hit my van, I'm gonna hit my van. Like I just he's just like a complete package. Like I think Tenna's great. Like I love Tenna, but I think there's more upside to having Terry Gordy on your roster.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, what role were you trying to fill? If you want a guy you could have as a main event guy, you could put the world title on, I would have picked Gordy. If you want like if you're not, if the person the role you're going to fill, I still would probably take Gordy because I think he was a little more versatile. But Tenta would be like if I'm looking for a solid mid card to upper mid card guy, like absolutely, I would have picked Tenta. Would have been a great choice.
I would put depending on the situation, like
Yeah.
breaking it down. Like I'm not saying like in every situation, but I could see situations where I'd put the world title on Tenta. Not necessarily. I wouldn't do like a long reign, but I could see situations maybe like, oh, you have Hogan. Like let's have Tenta beat him for like a month so we can put it back on Hogan at like Starrcade or like WrestleMania or something. Like I could see situations like that.
I want to come up with a reason to pick Tenta, not just to be contrary, but I don't know. There's just something about the guy I like, but I can't argue with your guys' reasoning. Um, yeah, I can't come up with a good reason, good enough. I can't come up with a reason that I think is good enough to disagree with you. So
I should have made this extra evil and done like Gordy versus Boss Man. I'd still take. I think I'd still take Gordy, but like that'd be a really tough one too. Okay, so the next one is Tiger Mask or Dynamite Kid.
You're talking
Does Saitama
original?
the first? Yeah, the first
Yeah,
one.
the original. Wow, this is tough.
Yeah.
So I am going. I'm approaching. I fully admit that from watching Dynamite Kid stuff, I totally see his influence in contemporary stuff now. Like he was ahead of the curve for a lot of things. However, given what I understand about Tom Billington the person, I would be like, no, Tiger Mask. Give me Tiger Mask. I don't want to deal with this guy who's miserable and pissed off all the time and will beat the shit out of somebody in the ring just because he's unhappy about something. Like, no. Give me Tiger Mask.
It's odd because I recently, like this weekend, I was just listening to random clips, wrestling clips on YouTube, and it was like from a clip from like a 2000, literally like the year 2000 shoot, because he referenced WCW still being in existence, and it's like wow, but it's a long time ago that this shoot
Yeah.
was done. But it was
Was
a
it
shoot
an
interview
RF
Edge.
one?
It was Rob Feinstein.
Oh, God.
So
It
like
was one
he
that
was talking
that
through a
honky,
tin can.
yeah, but it was Honky Tonk Man, and Honky Tonk Man was actually like uh he was talking about briefly like him doing like a stint in Stampede. I think he did it with Dr. D, David Schultz. But he actually talked briefly about Dynamite and he wasn't mean spirited about it. Like he kind of made it seem almost like regretful because basically, which is the reality of what did happen is that Tom Billington struggled to be the size that he got to be. Did a lot of, I'm sure, chemicals and things to enhance himself, but also did a style that just completely broke down his body.
Yep.
And so after he was no longer able to do it, then got or Honky Tonk Man, which we know is true, like did a lot of recreational substances to address those issues. And according to the diplomatic way that Honky put it, was that he got himself into a lot of problems with it and became very bitter about life.
But
And
when
he said it again,
he's,
like he said it.
I think he was in a wheelchair by pretty soon after his career ended too. So like that doesn't help at
I
all either.
I remember seeing, I remember getting, when I was first getting into like tape trading. I remember getting like a VHS tape from like a, it was like a Michinoku Pro show or something like that, and it was Dynamite in one of what had to have been his final matches. And I remember he was so small, and at that point, like he should, he really had no business being in a ring. Clearly, see, it was like painful for him to move, but yeah, he's a guy who the style like wrecked his body and on a frame that he really shouldn't have even
What what I
like been
don't
doing this stuff that he was doing.
get about him though with getting that big. I get like probably he wouldn't have got to WWE otherwise, but when we did the Dynamite Kid show, there was a point. I think it was about 81. Like we watched the Brett match and he was younger and he was undersized. But there was one. I think it was it rollerball Mark Rocco that we watched him wrestle.
We did, yeah.
He was the perfect size for that. He was cut, he was built, but he wasn't oversized. Like he was
Yeah.
exactly what he should have been. And then we watched like the next one, he was all bloated up and stuff.
He was bloated.
Yeah.
But I also struggle with Dynamite Kid because I think I even said it on that show. But when we did that show, I don't even remember what he did, but I was like, I see why this guy was paralyzed by the time he was like 40 because like the way he bumps, like the dumb shit he did, like he's hard to watch sometimes. Like he's really good. I'm not gonna try and take anything away from the guy. I get why he was so influential. I get why he's so beloved. But man, like you see all the shit he did to himself that just like you like get it. You're just like, oh man. But that's what frustrates me about the bloat though. Is like I said, there was that one match. It's like, why did you get bigger than this? You were perfect at this size.
And
unfortunately, go ahead. Go, Chad.
Yeah, I was just gonna say one thing. He's also just, I mean, apparently was just a miserable person too. So, man, I'm not here for having someone like that around.
Well, I guess much like the Eddie Gill or Buddy Landale, like assume he wasn't a miserable human being. Like he wasn't. I was gonna say like he unfortunately is probably like ahead of the era, and by that I don't just mean like his style, or I mean like he was perhaps born the wrong time. Like he came to be in the 80s.
He was
had some iconic matches, like amazing matches for the time. But if he was coming up 20 years later, in the early aughts, he'd be a guy who probably would still be around today and would be beloved in the way that guys like Danielson or even guys like Sami Zayn or Kevin Owens.
Even if he came around like, even if he had like the same career progression that like Chris Benoit had, and he just managed to get on TV on like Nitro in like that 96 to 98 era and had good matches, like I think he would have ended up in WWE. He would have had a run. Like I don't think he would have like won a world title, but I think there's a career where he kind of has that arc, maybe ends up in TNA and he's doing stuff like, I don't know, like elder statesman stuff in AEW now or something.
He potentially would be alive and not crippled.
Yeah.
And perhaps a better human being. But I love Dynamite. At least in terms of like his work. I guess at the end of the day, I probably would pick Tiger Mask, and I feel unfortunately it's because like much like Shad, like I know too much about Dynamite, so I think that's coloring things. Where it's like if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a hypothetical promoter, I would feel like I could get more value out of Tiger Mask. Like Tiger Mask was a great worker. He's some of those Tiger Mask matches from like literally at this point 40 years ago are still almost like they hold up today. And I mean hold up today in the sense that if you had two guys, just like indie workers, it's like take two indie workers and take a Tiger match versus Dynamite or someone else, and had them be like, I want you to replicate this match. And by replicate, I mean I want you to do every single I'm choreograph this thing 100%. I want you to do every move exactly how it is. I want you to sell exactly, and you put that in front of like a crowd without them understanding it's like a completely choreographed replica. People go crazy being like, wow, this is amazing, what a great match, 5 stars. And it's like, yeah, that a guy did this 40 years ago and it still looks amazing today with some of like the really crazy acrobatic stuff that people are capable of now, because wrestling, much like again how this would be a better era for Dynamite, it's like wrestling, the body structure of the average wrestler is a lot different than it is. Like you don't have guys who die at age 40 because they just did a crazy amount of steroids and they're just bloated and almost immobile. They're so bloated with steroids, as you would see like in the 80s and 90s. You know, guys are able to do a lot more because they physically, the body structure is different.
And I think
Tiger Mask, I feel like he could. Go ahead.
He's got his positives that I think are underrated too. Like his strikes are really good, his kicks are really good.
Oh yeah.
He's super athletic and agile, but he knows how to keep it in his pants. Like he knows like, oh well, if I do flippy stuff like 3 times during the match, that'll get more over than doing flippy stuff like 8 times during the match. Like he's a pretty smart worker about it.
Yeah, and I appreciate like the showboating of that, Eric. That's like his flippy thing may be like, I'm gonna do like a backflip and then like that's it. Whereas some of the people nowadays, you know, cough, cough, Will Ospreay, cough, cough. It's like there's a little too much like posing and pageantry and everything. And it's
he
like,
leaves
you don't need this.
He leaves you wanting more versus showing you everything that he can do in a single match every single time. Like it's like, oh, he did some cool stuff. I wonder if he can do more. Then the next match he does something different. Like it's not like a match now, like on the indies where you watch some guy for 20 minutes. And you're like, oh, that was cool. And then you come back and like, oh, that's all you can do. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's still influencing people today. Like, take someone like Starlight Kid. Like, clearly, like influenced.
Oh, she's very influenced by him.
Yeah, to her, not just her style, but like her mask. Like, it's only fair like he became like at least in wrestling, a cultural icon in Japan. I know he was based on like an anime or manga.
Yeah, he was.
Too, but
he's also kind of a pioneer in that Japanese shoot style. Like he was in the UWFI when it started and stuff. So he doesn't get much credit for that because Maeda and stuff get like a lot of credit for that. But he was involved in that group too. So shoot style is also like a thing he's been involved with too. I think I'd take Tiger Mask for the same reasons. Like Dynamite Kid, I recognize all of his strengths. But I also don't like watching him because, like I said, some of the matches are fine, but there was that one. Was he wrestling Harley Race or something? I just remember he did something. I'm like, oh, God, like, this is why you... I don't even remember what the bump was. I know Shad knows what I'm talking about because I think we both had the same reaction, but...
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but I remember having that visceral reaction. So...
Then we watched that other one that we just kind of stumbled into, and that was the 88 Survivor Series where he was just washed as hell.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for the next one? Because this one's going to be a tough one. Okay, Vader or Stan Hansen?
Damn it, Brad.
Battle of the Big Boys.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I have what I believe to be my answer, but I want to talk it out to see if I can articulate it properly. I believe that I'm going to need to pick Vader for the not just both of them could go, and both of them were hard hitting big men and that sort of thing. But Vader seemed to carry a different kind of aura with him in the ring that was something that it was something special and different and unique. And I just expressed the same thing 3 times with 3 synonyms. Vader just had something special to him that made him stand out, even in a realm of big men, and made him just an. If you think of him as the final boss of your promotion, he's excellent for it. Big, nasty, hard-hitting guy who's going to beat the hell out of you and powerbomb you and flatten you.
Probably drag the best match that your face is going to have out of them, whether they're
Yeah.
a great worker or not. I would say very giving.
He's willing. He's willing to take what you give him, and he is also willing to take as hard as he's willing to give. So if he's beating on you, beat back on him. He's willing to take that. And
No, he's talked about that because he was saying when he had that match with Flair, he said Flair wouldn't rough him up, so he had to get Flair riled up to go back at him. But no, that's kind of like he's talked about that before, and he expected to get like I think he said, and Hanson was kind of like this too. He expected you to give it back to him as much as he was gonna.
yeah. And so, don't get me wrong. I love Stan Hansen. I was going to go to a convention only for a picture and an autograph from Stan Hansen.
And then he wasn't there.
Yeah, he wasn't there. But Stan Hansen does not have the same gravity to me that Big Van Vader did. And maybe that's just a United States versus Japan thing. But then again, I'm a United States guy.
Well, Hansen doesn't have a signature, like that signature run in the United States.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he would have translated had they done like his Japan character there, because what I think Stan Hansen, I think, is one of the most unique characters ever in professional wrestling, because Stan Hansen versus just about anyone ever seen is just kind of a force of nature, this runaway freight train that you're just kind of trying to get out of the way of. Like, he is a guy that's always coming forward at you. He's kind of like, they talked about this in like the days of like Vikings and stuff. Like, he's kind of like a modern day equivalent of like a Viking berserker. But like
Stan Hansen was a tweener in that he wasn't so much a face or a heel. He was just coming for you.
Yeah.
He was almost like a force of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like he
was like he was kind of like a like I would go with his character. He's kind of just like a stampede of like a bison or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why I picked Vader.
I love Stan Hansen. Stan Hansen, like I feel like I've scratched the surface with Stan Hansen. Like there's just a ton of his Japanese work that I've not seen, and the stuff I have seen, he's phenomenal. Like, if anything, he's almost like underrated in terms of how good he was. And I'd probably rate him as like the best lariat of all time. I mean, a lot of people would agree with that statement, but I've seen him throw lariats to people that it's like you might have the same effect just giving someone a gunshot to the face. Like it just looks like the most devastating shit I've ever seen.
I can't think of her name. There's a Joshi girl that does like a really good lariat.
Mirai?
Yes, like she does a.
Yeah.
She does a really. Yeah, she's got. I think she must have watched this stuff because she has that like weight that he has behind it.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a fan of Mirai, but she does have a good lariat. I love Stan Hansen. Like That said, I would pick Vader just because I was actually, ironically, I was thinking earlier today about just who would you argue is the best monster heel of all time? And for me, I'd probably put Vader. Like Vader was absolutely fantastic, but Vader is one of those rarities in that he had everything. Like the guy could talk, the guy could work. He was a phenomenal worker, but work not just as a monster heel where it's like I'm working. I know how to work well against a small opponent, like make my small opponent look good and everything like that. Vader could work well with just about anyone and make it look good. And I mean, what was one of his best feuds? Probably arguably his best opponent. Even when you factor in his Japanese work, arguably his best opponent was Sting.
Yeah.
And Sting is not really a small guy. Like Sting's a big dude. Like I've stood next to Sting. Even like Sting in his older years is much bigger than me. And not that I'm like giant, but I'm like 6 foot, like 170, 175. But he's a big dude. Clearly this dude is like, no wonder you were like a bodybuilder, ex-football player, etc. You're a big giant dude. Vader made him look small. But Vader was a phenomenal worker, could talk. He absolutely could. You could put him easily as your like top main event heel.
It kind of makes me wish we had gotten a better him versus Bret Hart match in WWE.
Yeah. Well, Vader's WWE run was disappointing in my opinion.
They didn't get it. And I think Shawn Michaels being kind of a bitch about their match kind of really hurt him.
Yeah, he did.
That was a good match, though. But I think they didn't. I think maybe a couple years later they would have done fine with him, but I just think he was a bad fit for them. Like it's like when like they did the. I hate to defend Vince Russo, but when they did that Dark Side of the Ring for the Brawl for All, and like Jim Cornette and Jim Ross were acting like it ruined Steve Williams, and he was going to be so huge in the WWE, and there's Vince Russo being like, look, the guy was great in his day, but like he just wasn't a WWF style performer. And I'm like, God damn it, I hate agreeing with Vince Russo.
He wasn't.
Worst person you know has a point.
Well, it's like because even at the time, like, and I wasn't super smart in '98, but even at the time, I was like, this is a weird hire for them because, like, I love Steve Williams, like, he is amazing, but like, he doesn't have like that WWE like oomph to like his presentation, his charisma. Like, he has charisma, but he's kind of like a little more plain than they like. He's got more. Dr. Death has more body charisma. In WWE, like, they like kind of, I don't know, they want more than that.
Yeah.
They want like that bigger than life charisma to them.
Yeah. It was not a good fit.
No, it wasn't.
They, for lack of a better way to put it, they want the aura.
Yeah.
Like they need a guy with aura. And put it, larger than life is a good way to put it. Like the guys who have been the aces of the promotion have all, for the most part, been like larger than life, like Hogan, even Savage to a degree, Austin, Cena,
Rock.
I don't think Roman's like a larger than life character, but
no,
he certainly has.
Cody touches on it. Cody touches on it at times.
Cody does have charisma. I will say that.
I think Kenny and Bryan have a bit of it. I think that's actually kind of one of the struggles AEW has is they don't have like that guy at the top that has that like larger than life deal to them. But
well, that's a criticism that people like Dave Meltzer have been arguing like recently that they need that.
I kind of agree with
larger
that.
Than life.
But I think Kenny had that for them though, and Chris Jericho Chris Jericho Chris Jericho has it, but he's just. They need to give him like 6 months off. Like I think he would be refreshed by that.
I don't think he can do it. That's the thing is I think Jericho keeps going. When you're out for a while, it's harder to come back, and the older you get, it's harder to come back. And I think that Jericho is of the mindset that if he stops, he won't be able to.
And he wants to help guys too. I think that's the other reason he doesn't go.
I think he does. Yeah, there might be something to that, Shad, because I mean, you always have to take what wrestlers say, I guess, with a grain of salt. But he did recently, in the last like 6 months, I'd say, come out and say like, well, I don't really even lift weights anymore because it hurts my joints too much. And it's like, if that's true, like
he is doing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Shad. I cut you off.
No, it's fine. We're doing it again.
Yeah.
Matt, you go first.
I was just gonna say that he's been doing it like 30-something years, so it's like do anything that's high exertional like for 30 years, like it's even just running, like your joints are gonna hurt.
His thing right now. Hang on, Brett. Let me spit this out real quick before it gets away from me. The thing he's doing right now is that Chris Jericho is getting people TV time that they may not otherwise get. Big Bill would probably have somewhere to land, but he's also getting an opportunity to kind of hone his promo skills and that sort of stuff. And Brian Keith's getting a lot of TV time he wouldn't otherwise get too.
And Brian Keith is getting like direction. He's not just because before Jericho scooped him up, he was that guy that had good matches on TV, but like nothing else to it. Now he has like purpose, and I think he helped Daniel Garcia. I think like Magic Mike and like we're better off for it. Guevara, obviously, but I was gonna say as a sufferer of arthritis in my ankles and feet, I feel his pain on that.
Look, I know full well. God, I went to one indie show a few months ago that Alex Angel was on and JR Rock was on. And just, to see my friends do a show. And I sat there and I watched it and I was like in my brain, there were the two halves of my brain. One half was going, man, we can't do this. And the other half of my brain was going, it's so close, I can almost touch it. Can I make this work again? And then finally the rational part of me won out when it was like, dude, you wake up some mornings and your hip barely works. Do not do this. Now, could I probably do better by being a bit more active and keeping more flexible and that sort of stuff? Sure. But even in the time when I was being more active and flexible, my hip was still a problem. My neck was still a problem. My shoulder's still a problem.
I audibly groan when I get up some days because of my arthritis. So like,
it's making dad sounds when you get up.
Yeah, I found some medication. I found some medication this year that's helped me a lot, but I still like that day the temperature dropped like 30 degrees. Like there are days I can just feel it, like the temperature's going down. I can just feel the pressure on my everything.
I can feel it. Can feel it coming. It's like, oh, this is gonna hurt here in about 2 hours.
And God forbid it's cold out and your arthritis gets cold, then you're just in a whirl. Like if you can get yourself heated back up, it's okay. But God forbid you shovel snow and your arthritic joints get cold because it'll hurt so bad. It's terrible.
Yeah. You gonna say, Matt?
I have a friend who he said this years ago, but he was at this point he was in his 40s. Like he's probably like about 50 now, but he was in his 40s and he's like, yeah, I like threw out my back. And it's like he said this at like a happy hour group and people are like, oh my god, what happened? How'd you throw your back out? He's like, I fell asleep on the couch. And like, what? It's like, yeah, like I'm old in my 40s now, like falling asleep on the couch the wrong way. Like I hurt my back. I injured my back. My back was stiff like for a day or two. And it's like, oh man.
I know.
Time.
I have a friend that's physical therapist, and he said like repetitive stress injuries. Like he's known guys that have done construction for 40 years, and then they went to get groceries out of the trunk and threw their back out so bad they could never work again.
Yeah, yeah. There's the apparently the most common cause of rotator cuff injuries is reaching into the back seat of a car for something.
Oh well, now I'm gonna be terrified as hell.
Yeah, and so that's why me reaching for something in the car, I don't do like big rotate like that anymore. Like I swing my arm back and look for it because it's like this is not a risk I need to be taking. Like I can spend 10 more seconds.
Well, Teddy,
I
oh,
got-
go ahead.
Sorry, I got two small kids. I'm constantly reaching in the backseat for something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're not
I
like
know.
returning and reaching like that. But
My water bottle fell, and it's
yeah,
like, all right.
I dropped my water bottle. I guess you're just gonna have to wait.
Teddy,
No,
Teddy,
I'm
Yeah, I know.
driving.
I know.
Teddy Bridgewater. Oh, this has been way in the past now, but he was on the Vikings, and they were just doing practice, and he went back to throw a pass, and just from planting his foot, dislocated his kneecap so bad that they said if the medical staff hadn't been on site, he would have lost his leg.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's a point where you just can't do it anymore, and I think that's what Jericho's trying to avoid is because when he stops moving, the concrete's going to harden and he's going to be stuck.
Well, funny
And-
you should mention Chris Jericho because the next question is Chris Jericho or Christian? Because I think there's a couple things here at play because Jericho has a lot of longevity, but man, like Christian in like this last bit, and Christian has had points in his career, especially when he has something he can really sink his teeth into, where Christian can really put out some like epic healing.
Christian is a fantastic heel. He's a little younger than Jericho, but I feel that
Not by
physically he's in
much.
better
Like
Not by
3 or
much,
4 years,
but-
maybe.
yeah, but he is in better physical shape, I think, than Jericho. And I feel, at least in the last 5 to 10 years, the actual quality of his in-ring work has been better. Christian is underrated in terms of his in-ring. But he's really good. But I probably would take Jericho because I think Jericho has had better highs and has been a guy that for several points in the last like 20 years could be like your top guy,
Yeah,
your world champion or a main event face or heel, and it seamlessly would work. Like I think making him the first AEW champion was the right call.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
it instantly added like prestige to the title, and I think Jericho was fine. And since then, obviously, like he's been slowly moving down the card, and Jericho gets a lot of hate nowadays for people who, some people I think are disingenuous because they don't like what they perceive to be his politics.
They think he's a
I don't know,
conservative, and especially on social media, like there is this avid group of people that will just like you don't even have to. You don't even. It's so bizarre because you don't even have to espouse anything that's a conservative. Like I've seen some people that get massive hate, and like they aren't like they just are out of line with something like slightly, and they get hate on like they're some like
Yeah.
right wing guy. And
Yeah.
I imagine he is, but like it's like the same thing with Undertaker. Like Undertaker gets a lot of hate for that, and like just by listening to Undertaker shoots and stuff, and I'm like, man, if he is a conservative, he probably has the most milk toast like political views of like any human being that's ever
Yeah.
walked the face of the earth.
I don't know Jericho's politics. He could be. Apparently, I don't follow his wife, but apparently his wife is very
but-
like conservative.
But
What I care about is he making this like part of like the show. He's not. Oh, okay, then fine. I know one thing he has done. He's donated to a lot of causes that aren't necessarily like right wing causes, and he has
Yeah.
on social media defended coworkers, including and especially Nyla Rose, a trans colleague and friend of his. He's defended her, and that's not a very conservative necessarily position, being very pro-trans. But it's not either there. I think he gets a lot of hate for that when it's
Oh,
like,
and he's religious, so
I
he
don't know that he
gets hate.
is he religious.
Yeah, he doesn't talk about it a
Oh,
lot, but like his favorite band of all time is like Striper.
Striper, yeah.
And if you have to hear other people talk about him or like read between the lines, but like he is, I don't know how hardcore religious he is, but like he does have like a religious background that is there.
That he takes
I didn't
seriously.
know. That may be fine. Is he proselytizing? Like any chance to get?
No, but
oh, okay.
but
Why is it that?
because because those same people on social media, like if you're even vaguely religious, like if one of us had a cross in the background, there are people like on social media that would lose their goddamn mind about it and try
as
and
an
like
as that actually, as an aside, like I've seen that happen in real, like recently, because I think it was like I don't know, it's like an ad or a PSA or something. But Gwen Stefani did something for Christmas in which she said something like religious, and because it turns out she's like a serious Catholic, and people are like, what the fuck, Gwen Stefani? It's like, I didn't know this about Gwen Stefani, but what do you care? Like she did like an ad
Yeah, what
that
difference does it make?
just happened to appear on social media, and that's probably the end of it. Like if she's, I don't know that Gwen Stefani is this big Bible thumper. I didn't even know she was like Catholic or religious. So
we're like in year
what's it to
7
you?
of people freaking out at everything Chris Pratt does because there was a picture of him going to church once. So like it's
It,
Chris
it's
Pratt was more outspoken about it, but
even so, like my thing is like, is anyone beating you over their head with their beliefs? No. Okay. Like I don't want to be beat over the head with people's beliefs one way or the other. Like I'm not even saying like one's good, one's bad, or
yeah, but
I'm just saying like I don't want to know. I don't need to know. That's not what I'm not consuming wrestling content for like political or religious meanings.
the thing
And I'm
is
not
like the thing is though, if I'm tuning into a podcast about wrestling and they start Bible thumping or they even talk about politics I agree with, I'm just going to turn it off. Like I don't need to fucking drag them on social media and stuff. Like everyone's different. Like they're
yeah,
that's the problem I have with like when people do that. It's like you don't know how they grew up. You don't know what role religion played in their life. You don't know like maybe that kept them out of a gang. You don't know like if you talk about like Appalachia, those people have been routinely fucked by the government their entire life and know the government doesn't take care of them. So you're going to judge them for probably not like having a very anti-government like take on things. It's like, no, like that's like so I don't know. That's everyone's different.
yeah.
Like I live in a big city. Like I have an experience with like someone living in the hills of Kentucky have, but like when you say like, oh yeah, they've just routinely gotten fucked by the government, it's like, okay, like I get it.
Yeah. I guess I'm not one of these people, and this is not a popular opinion, some I guess quarters, but I'm not one of these people that I don't want to hear about the politics. But there are some people who believe like, no, everything's you have to have a position. It's like, no, I'm kind of of the position that when I want an escape from all this. So when I'm consuming certain media, I don't need to be beaten over the head by a political message. Like I think it can be done. You can obviously have political messages in entertainment. That's fine. But if I'm watching something like wrestling, like I don't need a political message.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people like Chris Jericho give that. But
No.
to bring it all back, I think people hate Chris Jericho.
I was gonna say too, with when you're saying when people say you have to take a stance, I hate that too because sometimes like they want you to have a strong stance, and sometimes like, look, I'm too fucking dumb to have a strong stance on this.
And no offense, but those people are actually full of shit because they're just like, you have to have a stance. Like that's not what they mean. They mean you need to have my stance, and it's like, what if I don't? Or what if I do have your stance like 50%? And maybe 50% I think like, oh, you're too far, I'm over here. And no, I don't like it. And I don't want it.
What if I don't care?
I'm,
What if I don't care?
Yeah. Exactly. What if I don't care? I actually don't have an opinion.
Here's the
No, I don't.
here's the
Maybe
other
I don't.
thing.
What if I can't pay my electric bill this month? Like,
Here's the
I
thing.
don't care.
We only have so much that we can care about. There is only so much in the world that we can give a damn about. And let's say that you do have a political thing you care about. Why do you care about that? Because it means something to you. Why do I care about, you know, incarceration reentry stuff? Because I see it all the time. Like, I see just how hard it is that if somebody's wanting to do better, just how hard it is for them to do better because the deck stacks against them. You know, like, they don't get the benefit of the doubt for nothing. They come out, they've done, no, they come out, they're released early on good behavior, they do everything right. Guess what? People probably don't care about that. You know why? Because they don't have any skin in that game. Do not jump up and down on somebody for not agreeing with you because they may or may not care because they care about something else. People are more complicated than we want to give them credit for. Where do I start writing people off when they do horrible, horrendous things? It's like, okay, that's bigger than whatever benefit of the doubt I could give you. It's like, nope, I'm done from there. Can't do it. So just back the hell off. And it's like Matt said, Jericho is more complex than people want to give him credit for. And this is also the guy that hits every wrestler-related GoFundMe that is out there, typically for the max donation amount. And then one time, he went through and put it under his real name and then was like, oh, not what I meant to do. And he didn't contest it. He just went back and did it again as Chris Jericho instead.
You're talking about the guy for the Bills that had the heart attack on the field. Now, he didn't put his real name. He misspelled his name. And so he put another donation in for the max amount to put his correct name. But
it was a lot of money.
It was
Yeah.
it was $5,000 each time. But
yeah, it was he like gave 10 grand. It's like, oh, I made a mistake. Here's another $5,000. It's like, whoa.
And
So,
I think
point-
I think it was Daniel Garcia like broke his leg and he wasn't even in AEW yet. And I don't think Chris Jericho had even like met him or anything. And like Chris Jericho gave him like 10 grand or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they worked that actually kind of into their forming the Jericho Appreciation Society. They worked that, but it was real. That's a real story he did, and they obviously worked it into it to have backstory. But this was something he did years before that you didn't hear about until now, and he didn't do it thinking like, oh, I can use this. Like it wasn't even a concept for these guys to be in AEW.
He didn't tell anybody. He just did it.
No.
So, okay, back to the point. These are both excellent veterans to have around. They are both very good. One of the things that stuck out in my mind is people saying every time you work with Christian in the ring, you learn something new. And it's people like heckin' Kane saying that. Kane and Christian kind of hate each other. Never mind.
That's only because like Christian, I've heard them talk about this, and Kane wants to like him, but Christian like endlessly like fucks with him. Like he's like, yeah, I saw Christian. I hadn't seen Christian like 5 years, and like I see him in an airport, and he just gives me a titty twister and runs away like giggling. Like that's the kind of stuff he does to Kane.
Yeah. So you have two guys who are skilled, who are, longtime veterans, who are very smart about the business. And what am I going to bring it down to? I mean, they're both really good, but I think that if I'm going to pick one, because this is difficult now, because if we're going to go at like how many miles are left on, how much time's left on the clock for them, Christian probably has more left on the clock. But the thing that I think I am going to push me over the side on Jericho is the number of different times Jericho has reinvented himself and it worked.
I was going to say that's a strength both of them have, like how they've both, I mean, Jericho's reinvented himself. Christian's very good at tweaking his character.
Yeah.
But like the amount of guys like of their age that I think could not stay relevant for as long as they have by reinventing themselves and tweaking like their characters. Is like some because like you watch old stuff and you'll see some guy that's like big in the 70s come back and like and you know he was still big up until like maybe even like 1980 or 1981 like come back in 86 or 87 and he just does not have like an ability to connect with the crowd anymore because he just doesn't understand anymore. Like I
Yeah.
think the fact that they have stayed relevant for as long as they have is like such an underrated quality.
Yeah. So I am going just for example, since Jericho's been in AEW, he's had
4 characters.
maybe 4 characters, right?
Well, he had that. So he had the original Jericho with his group. Then he had
The Inner Circle Jericho,
then he
yeah.
had the face turn where he feuded with MJF.
Yeah.
Then he went into the Eddie Kingston thing, which I want to say his AEW work is a little underrated because when he lost the weight, his ring work he had like a solid year there after he lost all the weight, and he still pulls out something good now. But that all Japan match Eddie Kingston had with him that was just amazing. But then that led into him turning heel again, and then to the Jericho Appreciation Society. Then you had the Don Callis feud that wouldn't end, but that was still kind of like the Jericho Appreciation Society Jericho.
Yeah.
And now you have the Learning Tree Jericho.
So out of those 4, I'd say 3 of those are pretty solid hits. Whereas Christian came in as a face, outwork everybody, then became the patriarch. And that's really now
He
patriarch thing has really worked.
He didn't. The patriarch thing came later though, because like the initial heel turn, like he kind of there like there's a character arc with Christian that leads to the patriarch. But what I loved about the heel turn with that is, and it's one of the times that it pays off where the detail is actually there, but it all came back to Jungle Boy eliminating him from that battle royal like a year ago.
Yeah.
So
which was hilarious, but like, yeah, because he was doing the heel thing for almost a year really before the patriarch started. Like, I think that really started when Nick Wayne showed up.
Well, he brainwashed Luchasaurus to follow him, and then pulled Nick Wayne in, and I think that's when he officially dubbed himself Patriarch. So it's a steady progression. It's not hard shifts.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's easy to bring the crowd along, but I think it's more impressive of having someone doing like hard shifts but still having the crowd with them. It's a win by inches, but I still think I'm going to go with Jericho.
I think I'd take Jericho just because I think Jericho has a higher ceiling. But I think Christian also has a Jericho has a higher ceiling, but I also think Christian has a higher floor. So like Christian's going to give you a much narrower performance area, but he's going to give you consistency where Jericho can kind of be up and down.
What are you going to say, Matt?
That's actually a good point. I would agree with that. Like Christian, if you look at the entire, well, let's go from his time in the late '90s Attitude Era WWF to WWE to now, so like a 25 plus career. Like I feel like his in-ring he's almost underrated. Like he's really, really, really great. But what I feel like has really developed over time is his character work. But I would agree with that. Like his floor is higher than Jericho. But I would still rate Jericho higher because Jericho, I think, has had higher highs. And the fact that he has been able to reinvent himself multiple times, and you can list like 3, 4, 5 times he's done it in the 5 or so years that AEW has been around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just AEW. Like AEW is a fraction of his overall career in which he has reinvented himself multiple times in that.
I mean, and think
Like,
about like when he was at the end of WWE, he was doing the list thing, which was hilarious. But he
oh
was
yeah,
largely doing comedy, and then he leaves WWE, and he's going over to New Japan doing like the Pain Master
The
stuff.
Painmaker, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to like I'll turn the clock back a little bit. An underrated, like God, what year was it? Was it 2008? Like maybe 2009, when he was a heel and he had the feud in the WWE with Shawn Michaels and also with Batista, and he was like uh doing like the Jericho-tron but he was more like a serious heel.
He was doing
Uh,
his Anton Chigurh gimmick.
kind of, but I mean, he
The I
was,
am the best in the world at what I do thing?
yeah,
Or was this, yeah.
y-
He,
yeah,
he
that
called that his
that.
Anton Chigurh gimmick.
Oh, okay, well, that gimmick when he again his biggest feuds, most notable feuds were with Shawn Michaels
Wasn't
and
there a
Batista.
Punk
I
feud in there that was really good, like around that time period with that character?
maybe, but
Or
I
was
would
it Jeff
argue that
Hardy?
he
No, that was Punk and
at
Jeff Hardy, I think. Okay, I'll shut up now.
I would argue that Jericho at that period was one of the, well, gimmick is best in the world, but he was one of the best in the world at that time period, and it was phenomenal. And that alone, like, would rank him up there. He would elevate him up the rankings of best ever. Like Jericho, I don't know where I'd put him if we really broke it down. Like who's the best ever? He's in the discussion for one of the best ever. Like at least in like the top 100 or top 50. Like he's really phenomenal, and that to me is a favorite of his career. That has spanned, of course, like 30 something years, but like I think that's underrated. But
Yeah.
again, I choose Jericho.
Can we step way back into the past for something that people know because it's well known, but I don't think he gets enough credit for? But how over he got Dean Malenko in WCW when they were
Oh yeah,
doing when he initially turned heel, because like I don't think Malenko's ever been that over at any point in his career. Like Malenko's good, but like when he unmasked from like the Battle Royal because was pretending to be Syncope, like that crowd just went absolutely insane for it.
So, in Jericho's first book, that moment of Malenko peeling off the mask and facing him, Jericho says that is the loudest pop he's ever been in the ring for, and he's been in the ring with Jericho and Rock at their heights, is how he put it. So, it's like, that's a hell of a thing.
I know Dylan Hales said the craziest crowd reaction he ever saw is the uncensored 97 where Sting just comes down and destroys like everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take Jericho
Yeah.
though. Like I said, I think Jericho's special. And like I mean Christian's special too, but like I think Jericho has like I wouldn't say he has like a I don't know. He's tough to rate because like Jericho isn't like I would say at no point has Jericho ever been like an elite level in ring guy. He's always been like good to very good, but that's also been like his ring work isn't always amazing. He's
Yeah.
he's kind of like, and I hate to say this because like Terry Funk is a goat, but he's like modern day Terry Funk in a lot of ways. And like the
Yeah.
constant reinvention of himself and like the aging gracefully and knowing how to like stay relevant as he ages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. That's. Can you imagine being able to just learn those lessons? Like just how valuable that would be.
Yeah. Okay, so we have one more before we're going to exit for the evening. And this is also, I mean, these have all been pretty evil, but this one's also difficult, and I need to think about it. I think I know I'm going to take, but so this is Brad Armstrong or Rip Rogers. So I think I'm going to take Rip Rogers, and I'm just going to say, I think I'm going to take Rip Rogers because he's such a better promo, and his character, like he has such like a fun character. Most of the time, like he's just so obnoxious. And like I think and he's really good in the ring. Like I don't think he's as good as Brad Armstrong, but I think he brings a lot more, like, in the promo department and stuff.
I'd probably pick Brad Armstrong because I think he's a better worker. But Brad Armstrong is also a guy who I think that when he started out, because he was a good worker, like they wanted bigger things out of him, but he just couldn't connect it. I mean, if you want to compare him to, his family, someone like Road Dogg, Brad Armstrong was a much better worker, but Road Dogg he got all the charisma there, like good talker and charisma. Um, Bullet Bob Armstrong had kind of both,
Oh,
good
Bullet
talker,
Bob,
good charisma,
Bullet
good
Bob,
worker.
I love Bullet Bob. Also,
Yeah.
Ron Simmons. There's a shoot interview you can find on YouTube with Ron Simmons and Scott Steiner, and they're talking about like they were wrestling fans before, and Ron Simmons was like, "Yeah, it's like we went over to Grandma's, like the wrestling came on, like everyone had to shut up and sit down, and and she was like Bob Armstrong was her man, like essentially. So he's like a Bullet Bob like Mark,
Mm.
essentially. But like I love Bullet Bob. Like the way his promos are excellent. Like he's good in ring. Like I love that we talked about on a show. I love that he doesn't punch people, that he karate chops people.
Mm. Mm.
And like
Open hand.
Bob's just good at being like a star. Like I think
Mm.
there's a skill to being like a star that not everyone has. And it's weird because everyone says like that has talked about Brad Armstrong is like, I don't know why he couldn't like have a personality on the mic because he was hilarious backstage. Like I guess he was like Mr. Personality off screen.
There's just a switch that doesn't flip sometimes, and or it might be something that just doesn't translate out like that.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, and I think what I'm going to do. God, they were both really good, but I'm going to tip my head over to Rip Rogers because Rogers has been such a great teacher to so many people after his in-ring career was over that I just find that so valuable. Like, yes, there are plenty of people who have been great in the ring and maybe they didn't hit high heights, but they were great and they're good to watch and everything. But to find people who have done that and have been really good and then can teach it is, to me, so very valuable. And so we'd have, like Danielson can't teach people how to be a good wrestler. He doesn't know how to tell them. He just goes out there and does it. But to have someone like Rip Rogers who can teach people and can instruct you in that sort of stuff, like that's to me that's huge.
Yeah, that is huge because I think like if you were like, okay, you're gonna open a wrestling school and you can pick whoever you want to be your trainers, I'd be like, Hustler Rip Rogers and Tom Pritchard, come on down.
I think I would need to think long and hard on it because Rogers I think would be one, but I'd need to consider who the other would be. It is because Rogers has the ability to really instill in you the understanding of the underpinnings, not just the fundamentals, but the why behind it. And then I would need someone who's like, okay, modern wrestling, this is stuff you need to know about modern wrestling. Like the style you work, that's fine, but you need to find a way to make that fit in the modern landscape. And I don't know who I would pick for that.
That's an interesting one because maybe whoever's teaching at the dojo in New Japan.
Like,
Because
I
like
know it's fun to go ahead.
Because I need to get you some matches, but like if you watch like some of the dojo guys that come out, like, and you're watching them and they have like 5 matches to their name, I think you would be enraged by like how good they are.
Maybe so.
But I think New Japan one, Stardom does this a lot too, but like a lot of times they're just like, okay, you have 6 minutes. Like we don't care about psychology, just go do your moves, and we'll figure that out later. And then like you'll see that they'll do that, and then like later, like 3 days later, they'll be like, oh, you're gonna work Yuji Nagata for 8 minutes.
See, that process, it to me is backwards of what I would want. I would want someone to be. It's like you're just going out there. No, you're going out there and you're doing basic stuff. You're doing basic stuff first, but we're gonna have you understand the why. After we got the why worked out, then you can start putting other stuff in there. Like learn how to play with the blocks before you start putting the Legos together.
I think their idea is like reps, and sometimes you'll see multis where there are trainers out there with them. Like especially in Stardom, you'll see that. But then it's like, oh, like, like I think they do that, and then like it's like, okay, you're gonna work with like Yuji Nagata for 8 minutes, and like it's just then those are really interesting matches to see like such an experienced vet that like probably you're not gonna push anymore because he's past his prime, but like he's really good for working that undercard like with the younger guys. Like I bet that guy's getting more out of that than he would get out of like a year at the performance center.
Yeah, you mean doing what 2 hours of free squats every day or something?
Yeah, I know. Sari just said she actually like WWE did teach her how to take better care of her body, like nutrition wise and stuff,
Okay.
and conditioning wise. But I just think like there's a point where you just have to have people do it. Like you can train them all you want, but at some point you have to get them in a crowd in a ring doing wrestling moves.
You also have to accept, and this is one of the biggest things that people get disheartened about is you after a certain amount of training, you just got to go out there and do it, and then you're going to start the process of learning again. But you're going to suck for a while. And you just have to accept that you're going to suck for a while. Or at the very least, you're not going to be very good.
I look at wrestling like stand-up comedy where it's like, if someone was to ask me like what I thought like wrestling wise, I'd be like, look, okay, it's going to be like stand-up comedy. You're going to be the absolute shits for like 5 years. Just accept it now. Like you just need to get better. But like just stick with it, like do what people tell you, and there will be a point where you finally like it starts to click for you. But like just accept you're going to suck for a couple of years unless you're like some prodigy at it.
You're gonna suck for a while. I wouldn't put a specific time on it. But you're also, if you're paying attention, you're going to be improving. So
unless you can find some place like back in the day, like Memphis, where you can work every day for months and months and months, like it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Because that's why what Scott Steiner said about Memphis, because he needed to get better to team with Rick. And he's like, well, Memphis doesn't pay you crap, but you get to work every night. So he's like, I got good real quick.
Yeah. So, yeah, to go back and answer the question, I'm picking Rip, but not for a very different reason.
His stuff with Adrian Street was a lot of fun when we did that show.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for the ones I picked. Do either of you have one you want to throw in there that you thought of or anything?
That's tough.
It is.
How about we brainstorm and we can make another show out of doing this?
Yeah, I think so.
So maybe we can come back with that. We can come back with each of us having a couple of pairs or something.
Well, that is it for the show, everyone. Like I said, we are not going to be on the next 2 weeks. I don't know if we'll come back with our awards show, but that'll be one of the January shows, and we might come back with that.
Okay.
I'll see how I feel about that. Because that's homework, and it's a little chaotic. Like, so just curtain back, we usually take 2 weeks off at the end of the year. So sometimes you come back and you're fine off of a break, and sometimes like you're a little rusty for that first episode.
Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah. So
we'll be back in the new year.
Yep. So thank you everyone for watching as always, and have a happy Christmas and New Year, and we will see you next year. I got to find the button now.